This is Waiting for Seconds, the interview podcast where we meet people and ask them who they are and why they are. I'm Shannon Miller, and like always, I'm joined with Malcolm, out Celt,
Yes, like always.
like always.
Like
And
always.
and today we will be talking with Opal Singer, also known as OpalMom for me. So, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Opal Singer. I have known Shannon for quite a few years. I was his substitute teacher in high school, but I also sort of became a pseudo mom for several of the kids there while my kids were in high school as well. I live in Port Orchard, Washington, with my husband and 3 dogs. Oh, no, 2 dogs, 3 cats, and 2 goats.
Wow.
2 dogs, 3 cats, and 2 goats?
Yes.
That's a lot of
forget
creatures.
you have goats.
I do. I have 2 goats. They're visiting somebody else right now and eating down their bushes instead of mine.
So like OpalMom said, I knew her in high school. I kind of knew her in middle school because she was a friend of a friend at first, but as time went on, I started to get to know her and her family, and it's like my own little pseudo family.
And I taught you to drive.
I was gonna say, yeah, you taught me to
wow.
not just drive automatic, but drive manual as well.
Yep.
That's crazy.
So she helped me get to certain destinations, picked up clothing, took me out for food, basically took me out of the dorm when like my parents couldn't, or there was other reasons like choir. I probably mentioned that I was in Sylvan at some point, which is the Auburn choir. But anyways, I'm just happy to have you. We already interviewed your daughter and her husband, so it was time.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to be interviewed.
I
think.
Well, you already told us your animals, so now I have to.
I did.
I want to know more about the animals.
Okay.
All right.
So, our dogs' names are Cinnamon and Poppy. And Cinnamon is geriatric. She's 17 and she's still hanging in there. And Poppy is 9. And they're just mixed breeds. I'm a firm believer in getting mixed breeds rather than purebred dogs because there's less genetic mutations and issues and whatever. So my dogs are usually either rescue dogs or some sort of a mixed breed that I find for fairly inexpensively. And then our cats, we have 3 cats. Their names are Tinkerbell, who is 13. And then Cheddar and Munster are 2. They're about 2 years old. We actually got them just before Aaron and Gabe got married, and they were 3 weeks old, and I had to bottle feed them. They're my special babies. We were supposed to foster them and give them back to the Humane Society, but I kind of failed.
That's pretty cute.
They were foster failures, but they're so sweet.
Are they of the same litter?
They are. They were siblings. Cheddar is all yellow, and Munster is mostly white with a yellow stripe down his back. That's the names.
That makes
sense.
Cheesy.
It so works.
Cheesy.
It works.
Yeah. And then our 2 goats' names are Gomer and Jethro. They're males that have been neutered so that they don't smell. And we got them because goats are fun, but also they do really well at eating back all the vegetation. And we bought 2 acres that was mostly brush. And so they've helped us clean that out quite a bit.
That's very nice.
Yeah. So, yeah. And I grew up on sort of a little farm and had animals and stuff. So I've just always had animals in my life.
Speaking of which, where did you grow up? I want to say you grew up here, like in Washington, but
yes and no.
Yes and no.
I was born in Michigan, and then when I was 5, my grandpa had a stroke, And so my dad wanted to move closer to my grandparents who lived in Pennsylvania. So we moved to Pennsylvania. And then when I was 12, my family packed everything and moved clear across the country to Washington State. And that's where I spent my teenage years, was here in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah. But I went to Auburn Academy, as you know. And so Aaron and you went to my alma mater. So that was kind of fun. And this year is my 35th year reunion.
Oh, that's
wow.
right. I forgot.
Yeah, it's 5 years for you, Shannon.
Yeah, I'm debating on whether I go or not.
Well, yeah, we'll talk later.
We'll talk later about that. So what was it kind of like living away from home? You guys were in, was it Enum? Well, was it around the area of Auburn?
Yeah, well, sort of Puyallup, and then Graham, Buckley, Seattle. We didn't live in a house for more than about 2 years, and then we'd move again because my dad would get a job somewhere else, and then we'd move again. And so we moved around a lot and went to a lot of different schools. I think I went to 10 schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. And for 3.5 of those years was a small one teacher school in rural Pennsylvania that had A grades, and there were like 11 students the last year I was there. It was mostly my siblings and me because there's 6 of us. And then when we moved out here to Washington, I was in a public junior high, and the culture shock, it was such a huge change to go from, a handful of students and you knew everybody to this huge public school. And I was so naive. I didn't know what people were talking about when they would say things. And years later, I was like, oh my word, I can't believe they meant that, kind of a thing. I was incredibly naive. And then I begged and pleaded to be able to go to Auburn Academy so that I could stay at one school for the rest of my years at high school. So my last 3 years were at Auburn Academy. And for 2 of those years, my sister and I would ride public transportation from Seattle to Auburn every day to be able to go to school there. And then my senior year, I stayed with a family that lived closer because my parents didn't want me riding the bus alone.
Was it kind of good for your development to be moving around that much, or moving around with all your siblings?
Well, I always had my siblings, which made it easier because we at least always knew somebody, even if it was just our siblings. But it also made me more capable of interacting with other people without hiding in a corner. Because I think I tend to be more introverted than most people would think. But because of all my moving around and needing to be a little bit more extroverted to make friends, I'm not as shy and introverted as I think I could have been. I'm the middle one, 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls. I'm the middle girl. And so I kind of got left out and would hide in my own corner, read my book and things like that. And I think the moving around forced me to not be quite so introverted.
Yeah, and I've always kind of known you to be like open, but of course you're still an adult. I mean,
But I definitely need my downtime after interacting with people for a while. It's like, oh, okay, I need to just be alone for a while in peace and quiet. I'm discovering that more too.
Everybody be quiet. Let me do me.
Yeah. I've been known to come home from school from a busy, loud day in the classroom to my husband having music on throughout the house, and I'll go over and tell it to be quiet so I can have peace and quiet.
Yeah. Sometimes getting home, it's just like, I just need to relax, just stop thinking and stop functioning, and sit down, and that's it.
Yep, exactly.
So what made you want to go into teaching?
I knew from a very young age that I wanted to be a teacher. And I think it stems from that one teacher school that I went to, because my 6th grade year, my teacher saw something in me and she would have me give spelling tests to the second, third, and fourth graders and help the second and third graders with their math and read with them and do things with them because there were 2 other boys in 6th grade with me. And
Mm.
I would always finish my work before they would. And so to give me something to do, she'd have me go work with the younger kids. And I loved it. And my mom says when my brothers and sisters were in kindergarten, they'd come home and I would play school based on what they would say about what they did at school before I even started school. So I think, and it's just something that I've always wanted to do. And I think it's kind of a little bit of a genetic thing too, because my mom had the potential. She never went to school to be a teacher, but she had what it in her to be a teacher and would come and help me in my classroom and would teach at our church. And, you know, it's and my siblings, both of my sisters are very teachery, if you know what I mean. I think it's just a family trait in us to be teachers.
Do you think that kind of also prepared you for like being a parent in a way?
Um, Maybe because before I was a parent, I was working with other people's kids. You know, I started babysitting when I was 14,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a nanny for the summer when I was 16, and I worked in preschool. And then when I was in college, I was a nanny for a little while. And so, you know, starting at a very young age, I was dealing with other people's kids. And so by the time I had my own kids, I didn't stress about, you know, all the new mom things that a lot of people would stress about. You know, my sister had 3 kids that were older than mine, and so I was around them when they were babies and stuff. So, you know, just it was just a natural thing for me to just be a mom. And I think I've identified as a mom even more than as a teacher in all these years of working with kids.
I mean, it makes sense, just considering my relationship with you.
Yeah. Well, I used to joke with my kids that I collect kids because you're not the only one that calls me mom.
I'm
And you
not
know,
even the
there's
first one who called you mom.
no, there have been a bunch of kids. There was he's 30 something now. He started calling us his pseudo mom and doing stuff with us, but when he was like 14 or so, when he was 16, he said that we were going to be his kids' grandparents whenever he had kids. And when he got married, he seated us as his parents because his mom couldn't be there because of her health and he didn't have a good relationship with his dad. So he seated my husband and me as his parents at his wedding. And
That's
that's
so
an
sweet.
honor to me. I'm honored when kids call me mom because that's a special title in my opinion.
And I imagine it feels like even if it's not blood family, it feels like real family at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, my mom, I have a really close relationship with my mom, and nobody could replace my mom. And it wasn't easy for me to call somebody else mom. The only other person I've ever called mom besides my mom is my husband's mom. And as soon as I had kids, it went from mom to Oma because I never felt truly comfortable calling her mom because of the relationship that I have with my mom. So because that's how special mom that word is to me, um, when another person's kid calls me mom, I take it as an honor and a compliment that these kids think of me as a mom. It's special.
Now with that, how do we determine who our family is? Like Malcolm was saying, it's kind of like a beyond blood relationship. How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's totally beyond blood relationship. You know, one of my college roommate, I've known her longer than I've known my husband, and we still talk at least once a week, sometimes more. And my kids have grown up calling her auntie, and her husband is uncle. She's like a sister to me. So family doesn't have to be blood. Family
Did
can be whoever you invite into your heart and into your life.
So you kind of even knew that before this, like, I don't know, it seems like there's a new wave of this pseudo family uh relationships now as just as a different generation, I think. But it's almost like it didn't actually change. It's been like that since even you were our age.
Oh yeah, I mean, when I was your age, the person that I lived with as my senior year in high school, she's the closest thing to another mom that I've had, and I called her Mom Kathy or Kathy Mom, Mom Kathy. It was Mom Kathy. And she let me stay with her my senior year. And I actually lived with her for a while longer after that because my parents had moved out of the state and I didn't want to. So yeah, that concept of people not the family is more than just your blood relatives has been around a lot longer. We have other people in our lives that were, we've called them aunt and uncle, or there was Grandma Benson was somebody that was really influential in my parents' lives when they first got married. And when we moved out here to Washington, we connected with her, and she was just always Grandma Benson, even though she's not related blood wise. And sometimes blood family you have to let go of, and and say goodbye to people even if they are related by blood, because they're just not good for who you are and where you're at in your life.
Do you ever think you could bring those people back?
I think it's possible, but it would have to take some work and some changes and some, there's the things that made them not a good fit in your life wasn't because you didn't love them, but because behavior or choices or whatever. It's like friends too. You have to sometimes let some of those things go because they're not good for where you are in your life. But that doesn't mean that they can't come back into your life. But you just have to be able to set your boundaries.
Yeah. That all of that kind of sounds like a lot of stress.
It is. It's so I'm just going to put it out there. It's hard to, I know it's easy to say that sometimes those people shouldn't be a part of your life, but it's hard to actually boot them out of your life for various reasons.
It's hard to actually make that happen.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Do you have any advice on how to make that happen?
Nope. I'm struggling with it right now.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Choosing to end relationships is really not
It's
an easy
hard.
thing.
No. Yeah.
Well,
But I got
I wish
serious all of a
you
sudden.
the best in that, but I'd love to know, did you become a teacher because of positive school experiences, or I want to know why you became a teacher and if it was related to your school experience.
Well, like I said earlier, I knew I wanted to be a teacher in sixth grade because of positive teacher interactions and school experiences. My public school experiences were not so great. I really struggled, but I think part of that was culture shock as well, and just being lost in the sea of people. But then when I got to Auburn Academy, in a smaller school and Christian environment, a little more sheltered, which is what I just did better at. I had really great positive teacher interactions there as well. So I think my school experiences did have a lot to do with me wanting to be a teacher, for sure.
Did you ever have any, other than just public school, any really terrible school experiences that, like, I think there's the obvious motivation of I want to be like these great teachers who did these great things for me. Was there ever any, I need to be a teacher so that these teachers, these people aren't in the system?
No, that never would crossed my mind. Although I know that there have been terrible teachers, I can't think of any that I personally had. My terrible high school, I guess the closest thing to a teacher would have been my work supervisor where I went to school, because we had on campus work. But
Yeah.
it wasn't in the classroom. It was this company called SeaTac Pack. And what they did is they would count out, all the little screws and things that are put in with packages when you to build. Okay, we would count those out and put them in packages to ship out.
That sounds
And
Oh man.
we were not allowed to talk because it would mess up our counting, and we were not allowed to talk. But this supervisor, we had these things that they were called pinnets that we had to sew. And it was like a strip of fabric with magnets in it that you sew Velcro onto it so you could put it around your wrist and put pins on it while you're sewing. And I learned how to sew from my mom when I was younger. So it was something I could do with my eyes closed almost. It was super easy for me. And this is just one example of what he did. So a friend of mine, I was working on that. A friend of mine came in and I turned around and I said, "Hey, I need to talk to you at break." I was really excited about something. I don't even remember what now, but I said, "I need to talk to you at break." And she says, "Okay." And I turned around to go back to my work. And he was training somebody new behind me. And he says, "If you don't mind, I'm trying to teach her how to do this." And I said, "Okay, fine." And I started working against, "Well, if you want to have that attitude, you can just leave." And I was like, "Okay, fine." And I left. And then he called over to the supervisor who talked to my dad, and my dad chewed me out, and I had to go back and work for this guy. But he would come up behind me and pull my hair, and he was just not a nice guy. I didn't like working for him at all, and so I quit fairly soon and found something else on campus to do instead. But my teacher experiences were all pretty positive.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that your teacher experiences were positive, but that's a wild.
Yeah.
Pulling your
How is he
hair?
still work there?
I don't know what happened to him after a while. I was not the only person that didn't like working for him, but he was, I don't know how much longer he lasted after I left. I was there for 3 years and students cycled through. There was not a lot of longevity working for him.
Yeah, that is no surprise. I hope he was not there long. Those kind of folks do not deserve to be mentor
Yeah.
figures and
And see, and I didn't want to be that kind of a teacher.
hmm
So, yeah.
And I assume you don't pull any students' hair, so you did a good job.
No, I don't.
I think you're doing a
You
good
did
job then.
it.
If you're not pulling your students' hair,
I pull out
you're a
my
good
own hair,
teacher.
but that's different.
Well, yeah, that's
That's
in the course of being a teacher.
Huh. So with this like building up of your character and becoming a teacher, what do you think like most built your character? Uh, maybe it wasn't like your
Mm.
school life experiences. Maybe it was something outside of that.
Well, I think every experience that you have in your life builds your character because it's how you deal with the things that come your way, good or bad. You know, you can deal with it in a positive way, or you can deal with it a negative way. And I think, like I said, every experience that you've gone through helps to build your character. So, you know, being one of 6 kids, it helped me to learn to be able to speak my voice and make myself heard when I need to, although that it wasn't always easy. And sometimes I felt like, you know, just be quiet and go away because that voice was being louder. And I have a very dynamic younger sister who was really good about making her voice heard. And she, you know, she doesn't care who she offends. She's going to tell you like it is. She's not mean in what she says. She's just, I'm going to tell you like it is. And if you don't like it, tough, get over it, you know? And I talked to her. I said, how do you do that? Because I don't know how to do that. I can't just blurt it out there. I get shaky and nauseous and anxious, and it's just a different personality. But you know, so siblings and um, I there's a lot. There's 50 years of experiences that I could put in there that help shape my character. Public school, private school, it all kind of melded into who I am today.
So no matter what experience you had, it built your character. Or no matter
Yeah,
what kind of experience you had.
right. So, like, you know, I dated a guy who started to get abusive, and I could stay and I could take it, or I could leave and find something better. And I left and find something better because I deserve to be treated with respect
hmm
and not,
Right.
you know, dragged down a hill and bruised. So, you know, that builds character. You know, when bad things happen, I could choose to get angry and sulky and bitter, or I can just pull myself up by my bootstraps and move on and again find something better.
hmm
And I've always tried to be more of that positive person to, you know, pull myself up by the bootstraps and move on. And you know, I've had to go through the grieving process multiple times in the last year or so, but I've done a lot of work and I'm in a much better place than I was a year ago. So there's that too.
So you would consider yourself more of an optimist than a
Oh, yeah.
pessimist?
Yeah, for sure. I always tried to see the bright side. And there was a while that I couldn't see the bright side. I couldn't find my joy. And I really struggled with that because I didn't like how I felt, that I couldn't see the joy in the things around me. It was not a good place to be, and I'm glad to be out of that hole.
If you don't mind me asking, when did that change for you, and why did that change for you?
When did it change? Well, part of it changed because I went to a weekend of mental health renewal. I don't know how to explain it. It was a workshop that I went to, and it's just about unpacking all that baggage that I was carrying around, and I didn't need to. And get to the bottom to realize, you know what? I am an important person. My voice is worth being heard. I am special, and there is good that I can, and I started to see that joy in myself again and the joy around me. That's kind of what started it. And I still have days where I get kind of down and frustrated with, things, but I've also had a change in my work situation. And so I don't have all the stress of a full-time teacher going on right now. I can go in and I'm subbing again, so I can go in and, do the best part of the job, which is actually interacting with the kids and the teaching part. And I don't have to deal with the parents and the lesson plans and all the added stress that comes from being a full-time teacher. I'm kind of liking that.
A lot of the most enjoyable, I think a lot of people have had experiences with teachers, are subs. Subs have the opportunity to just be fun, have a good time. Teach you something if they have a good way to teach you something, but make a good day for a bunch of students.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
and
that's
I always
really,
tell my students at the beginning of the day, I said, it's up to you whether you have a good day or a bad day. I
Mhm.
said, if you guys, you know what the expectations are, this is what your teacher's asking of you, this is what I'm asking of you.
Mhm.
If you understand your expectations, you live by them, then we're going to be fine. But if you're going to be ornery and rotten, then I will get, mean Mrs. Singer will come out, and they don't like mean Mrs. Singer. I don't like grumpy Mrs. Singer.
I don't either.
But I think have an innate ability to build a rapport with kids fairly quickly, and I think that they see that in me, and we just click, sort of. Some kids are easier than others.
I can't remember how many times you've subbed in different classes of mine.
Well, so your senior year, I did over 90 days of the school year at Auburn Academy.
That's true, because you were subbing for Mrs. Richards.
I did sub for Mrs. Yeah, I subbed for her maternity. The year before that, I subbed for Mrs. Coberstadt while she was recovering from surgery, and Mr. Williams while he was recovering from surgery. So I did a couple long-term subs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are good memories. That's all I have to say.
I had some really great conversations with the academy students when I was subbing, especially if it was just a one-day thing and there wasn't a lot for them to do, or students would come in while they had a free period or whatever, and we just sit and chat. We had some pretty great conversations, I think,
Yeah.
And I felt honored that kids felt open enough that they could talk to me. And there were some days when somebody would come up and go, and you could tell they were having a bad day. I'm like, oh, do you need a mom hug? Yeah, I do. All right, bring it in. I got you. Or another time I saw a student hugging his girlfriend, and I would jokingly go, I saw that. I'm watching you. Oh, Mrs. Singer, do you need a hug too? And he'd come give me a hug.
I know exactly who you're talking about, too.
I know you do.
And they're married now.
No.
No?
I don't
Shannon
think
does
so.
not know who she's talking about.
I haven't heard that this person is married.
Oh, wait, never mind. Different guy.
Yeah. Who are you thinking?
I was thinking of Izzy.
No.
Different.
No, I
different
put them
story.
on social.
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah.
Good times. Good times. It makes me miss those days, like where high school was chill.
Yeah.
It's weird now, and I mean, you see it you probably have seen it now from both perspectives. Like, high school is so weird for kids.
It is. There's so much going on for kids these days, and COVID just made things even harder sometimes with the masking and the it gave the impression that education isn't important, and it's just been a struggle. And there's so much more going at the world today. Like when I was a teenager, I didn't have social media bombarding me with how I should look and what's going on in this world and bullying, and there was, it's just a very different world that kids are growing up in today that I didn't have. And so, that tells me a lot why there's been so much more of an uptick in anxiety and depression and a lot of other mental health issues for kids, and their world is just completely different than what we had growing up.
Yeah. Do you know how you could what am I trying to ask? Essentially, do you know how you would have dealt with certain things? Like the questions that people have asked you, whether it be emotional, spiritual, or mental, do you know at your age how you could have dealt with those things?
How I could have dealt with them as a teenager?
Yeah.
No.
No, that's pretty.
I mean, I have ideas. I could try and give somebody advice on well, you could try this or you could try that, but really, I think more often than not, what people need more than anything else is just somebody to listen and say, yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. They don't, because I would call my mom and talk to my mom about something, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know what I can do. I don't necessarily want you to do anything. I just needed to talk to somebody. I just needed somebody to hear me." And so you just need somebody to go, "Yeah, that sucks. I'm sorry. I hear you," and not try to give advice, not try to fix it. And because I experienced that with my mom, I try really hard not to do that with my kids when they call me and ask me, or talk to me about something that's frustrating. Yeah, all I can do is say, "Yeah, I'm sorry, that sucks. I don't know what else to do." You know, so just to know somebody hears them.
I guess that's such a good reason why like a lot of these students became like part of your family. It's just because sometimes people's parents just don't listen. Like they want to fix everything, and so I guess it's just nice to have occasionally like an adult that just listens and can't try and solve the issue.
Yeah. Not to say that I was a perfect parent, because I wasn't, but I tried really hard to just listen and let them speak and not be judgy. They don't need that. Kids don't need to be judged. They just need to know somebody cares.
Mm. Mm.
Okay, I have a weird kind of. This is out of personal interest. This question.
Okay.
I've noticed a lot of young folks, a lot of whatever the generation is called, aren't very tech literate. Have a hard time typing on keyboards and using Excel, using Word, using PowerPoint, those kinds of things. And I want to know if your students have some level of tech literacy, uh, whatever sample size you have, if they have that tech literacy to use those kinds of tech, or if it's just like phones.
I tried to encourage my students to learn how to type properly on a keyboard. I would sit there and they would talk to me and I would be typing something up and they would then be looking at them while I'm typing. They're like, well, how do you do that? I said, practice. It just takes practice. So it was something they wanted to be able to do, but they never really got very good at it because there's only so much time in the day to do things. My kids were getting pretty good at using the Google Suite tools, Google Docs
Okay.
and
Yeah.
Google Slides and things like that. I used those quite a bit, had students do things in there quite a bit. Didn't really get into Sheets and Excel because honestly, I don't even understand those ones very much. That one I
That's
struggled
fair.
with. But I did try to encourage them to do other things. We would bring up Tinkercad and they would play on Tinkercad, and I did some Khan Academy does Hour of Code, and I would do that with them, have them do the Hour of Code so they could learn a little bit about coding and things like that. So I would get them on the computer and try and encourage them to use the computers to do some assignments. But I don't know how tech savvy some of them. Some of them were better than others. And sometimes they had to show me how to do something. So, but I also have a computer programmer for a husband. My husband's IT, so he helps me understand things a little bit more too. So I'm a little more tech savvy than I would have been if I hadn't married him, I think.
I love your husband. He's fun.
I love my husband too.
I'd hope so. Well, I guess with that genre of like education, how do you feel about the education system as is right now?
Oh, I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Our school and Washington Conference has been working on shifting over into a performance-based grading or standards-based grading rather than A, B, C, D and percentage-based, but actually showing that they can reach this step in their education. Like if there's something specific for math, they have to be able to show these things to show that they understand it, and then grading them appropriately or accordingly by how well they can master those concepts. And so standards-based grading, if there's a big shift going towards that instead of just how much of your homework did you do kind of a thing. And which I think is a good thing because, we want the students, it's more of a focus on mastery than just getting your work done or, and that's really what it should be about, is students understanding and mastering these different concepts instead of just kind of struggling to get through.
Instead of just having these big assignments that they're supposed to get done when in the long term, they don't even really understand what they're writing about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and some of that, it's a little bit of a challenge. Math is one that the kids are like, why are we ever going to use this? And I have to tell them, at this point in your life, you don't know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. So we have to give you a foundation. We're working on the foundation still. You can't have a house without a solid foundation, or it's just going to crumble in. They don't like that answer, but we do the best that we can.
Now, when you say you do the best that you can, are you talking from a teacher perspective or having like the material that you are teaching?
Yes, both. Sometimes it's the material, sometimes it's the material and tools that we have available. We don't always, in small private schools, there's not always money to have the latest and greatest. And so you have to kind of make do with what you can find to be able to teach a concept or to, teach about history or science or whatever. And well, I know there's a shift in the public schools where they teach mostly reading and math. Some schools have more focus on science and social studies, but those are not as much of a thing in the public schools, especially in elementary school. But I think that science and social studies needs to be a part of their education as well. So teachers kind of sneak it in with math and reading their science and social studies, because it's important to know what's going on in the world around you. It's important to understand why things work the way they work. It's also important to understand history and how things led to what they what happened, because history, it repeats itself, and it's starting to repeat itself again,
What do you mean by that? In what way
His-
is
repeating itself. I feel like the 60s are coming back around again. Kids rebelling against the way they were raised, deciding to go by different names, living alternative lifestyles. That was happening in the 60s, not in the same kind of alternative lifestyles that we have today, but definitely alternative lifestyles and, just society. It's different, but it's the same.
Right, because it's just a newer, more
Yeah.
technological society.
Yeah.
How do you feel about technology comparatively to when you were a kid?
It's changed so much from when I was a kid. I mean, we had a Commodore 64 in the classroom.
That was the original computer.
That was the original classroom computer.
Right.
And now, I mean, people are using little watches to text people and play games. It's just technology is so vastly different from what it was when I was a kid. And when I was in high school and I was supposed to be doing computer stuff, I didn't understand it. It made no sense. Computers hate me. They just hate me. They're not going to work for me. They just hate me. But then, yeah, I started dating a computer science major, and I guess he's rubbed off on me or something, because I can handle technology better. I'm not afraid to try and learn something new. It might take me a little bit longer to get 100%. Well, I don't know if I'll ever get 100%. It takes me a while to get comfortable with it, but I'm not afraid to try. The thing that scares me about technology and education is the AI, because students are using AI to write their papers more now, and they're not thinking for themselves like they should. I think students still need to learn how to think for themselves, establish their own opinions, and be able to back them up.
Do you think that's a huge problem
Yes.
for like the ongoing generations?
Yes, I do. I have had multiple students that cannot formulate an opinion, or if they have an opinion, they really can't back it up. And if you, I've told my students, I said, you don't have to agree with me. That's not what this is about. If it's a what do you think, that's your opinion, and your opinion doesn't have to be what Mrs. Singer thinks. It has to be what you think. But whatever you think, you do need to be able to support it.
Like you said earlier, you almost like they need to have a foundation of something before being able to talk about just those questions, like the what do you think questions.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of students, I think there's a huge need for instant gratification. Because of video games, you win in instant gratification. It's, this instant result. And education isn't like that. It takes time, and it takes patience, and it takes making mistakes to be able to learn. Learning is messy. And so I think it's really important that students learn how to make mistakes and learn from them. And they learn how to play the long game, that it doesn't have to be instant gratification, and to be able to really think for themselves and not just have everything spoon fed to them.
Well, now I'm going to ask, in a way, does that performative structure of grading kind of feed them? Or maybe I'm asking the wrong question. Like, how does performative grading work comparatively?
The standards-based grading?
Yeah.
So the standards would be something like being able to formulate a response, being able to give reasons for your opinion. It doesn't mean that you have to have a specific answer, just that you can answer in this way. It's like if the assignment was a 3-paragraph essay, argumentative essay, then it would be the standards we would be looking for in grading is that the thesis statement is strong. That they've formed an opinion, they've answered the question, they've given reasons to back up their answer. That's what we'd be looking for, not necessarily what their answer is, but how did they answer it.
Gotcha. And overall, do you think that's going to be better for the future of our education system?
I don't know. That's hard to say. I guess this kind of grading system has been around in the past. And it's like a pendulum. Education methods swing back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just kind of over on the other side, working back over to the other side for performance-based, standards-based versus percentage-based. It's kind of gone back and forth. But I think it's a better way for students to be able to look and see, okay, this is where I'm really getting it, and this is where I need to work. And they're more involved in their actual learning and grade system rather than just, oh, I got an A on my report card. Like, oh, wait, this is where I'm at. How do I get to the next level?
Gotcha.
What do I need to do to get to the next level?
I mean, honestly, I'm excited to see that form of education, because it definitely shows that this new generation of kids, and even kids in my generation who are still going through it, are struggling to, like you said, make an opinion, almost like the structure of education has been a method to train workers instead of thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wanted my students to come out of the classroom as thinkers, not just doers.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how kids are just kind of conforming to that. As of late, I mean, we see it more and more. Kids who are just being conformed to this system, and maybe not a system, but just this way of thinking.
There's a fear of failure. There's a fear of failure in our society. Kids are afraid to fail, and so they want, just give me the answer. Tell me what you want me to say, so I can get an A and move on.
Yeah, I think that I was just talking to someone the other day about how they had a very hard time in school and still got out and like with terrible grades and failed classes and got a good college education and a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think kids these days, that's a very funny, weird phrase, whatever. I don't think kids have the same opportunity. Like, I think that a lot of kids get good grades and do well in school and all of the things you're supposed to do and still barely get through college with
Mm-hmm.
thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt.
Yeah. Well, so our society for a really long time pushed that you had to get a college degree. I was in that generation. They had to get a college degree. You had to go to college. When my kids came up through, by the time my youngest was in 8th grade, they were, people were asking them, where are you going to go to college? And she said, I don't want to go to college. And I said, okay, what's your plan? And she said, well, I'm going to marry a rich guy. And I said, yeah, well, you see how well that worked out. I said, you see how well that worked out? What's plan B? I said, you have to have a marketable skill. College is not for everybody. And that's totally fine. You do not have to go to college, but you do have to have a marketable skill, something that you can do that can help you earn money. So my daughter decided to go to cosmetology school. and is doing hair and doing fabulous job, loves what she's doing. Meanwhile, her husband is not a college graduate. He didn't go on to get a trade school or anything like that. He's a very hard worker. He is a very smart guy, but he was definitely not an academic kind of a person. And that's okay. That's okay. He's got drive, he's got gumption, and he's going to make something of himself. He's just going to do a different route and not go to college to do it. And that's fine.
And that's just honestly just seems like the best route to go, because even if you, I would put it in quotes, fail in one part of growing up and then you continue to succeed afterwards, it almost just makes schooling unnecessary. But like you said, you have to have that foundation.
Yeah, I think it's important to get at least. I mean, not everybody is able to get at least a high school diploma. That's preferable, but it doesn't always work out that way. Life happens, things happen that it just makes it impossible to finish that high school in the way whatever. So there's other options, besides just finishing high school, but definitely through 8th grade, because the foundations for writing, for math, it's all, if you can get that solid foundation, you'll just be better off in the long run, in my opinion.
Speaking of writing, I mean, you were talking about AI writing essays for kids now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're gonna maybe remove technology from education again, or how are we going to be able to still involve ourselves with like the growing technology, and also try to avoid those letting something take care of it for me?
That right there is the great question for all teachers. It's, do we completely eliminate technology and make the students write their essays on paper again? Or do we embrace AI and teach them how to use it responsibly? That's a good question.
Do you have an opinion on that?
I don't.
That's fair.
It's
a really hard question with no easy answers.
I think technology is here to stay. It's not going to go away. AI is here to stay. It's not going to go away. So really, realistically, the best thing to do is teach students to use it responsibly.
We've also developed a fair few tools that I wouldn't be surprised if you used them in class yourself, that are like AI detection programs.
Well, honestly, I have used AI to help me write lesson plans for a unit. But you can't just rely on AI to do all the work. You give it, okay, I want lesson plans for this. Then you have to go back through and read through it, make sure it's accurate. And then you still have to go and gather the materials to be able to make it a cohesive unit. So it's not like AI does all the work for you, but if it's a paper that you're turning in, you could get away with it. But there are AI detection tools that you can use. I have used tools because I know my students have a really bad habit of cutting and pasting. They have not learned the importance of not plagiarizing, and how really, that's not a good thing to do. And I have been working. I was working with my students to understand that is a crime, and you can get in trouble for it. For claiming that somebody else's work is your own. And so but I think AI is something that's not going to go away. We do need to students need to learn how to use it responsibly, and not just let it do all the work, but let it get you started and then go from there to add your own personal touch to it. Because I had students who would write something and I would read it, I was like, you didn't write this. Well, how do you know I didn't write that? Because you don't talk that way. You don't use words like that. That is not you. Um, so, teaching them how to put it into their own words and stuff like that. So they still have to do some work. But I think the problem with AI is that it's taking that the students aren't thinking for themselves. Again, it's all about using their brains to think for themselves and to come to their own conclusions and to formulate their own thoughts. And when they let AI do it, they're just, it's like the computer's taking over. And, I tease my husband that, I don't want to get an electric car because it's going to take over and not let me go where I want to go. And technology is kind of doing that. It's, it's dumbing down our society.
Almost like we're slowly going to be turning into the Wall-E people.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good movie.
I love that movie,
It
but
was.
I hate to say it, it's slowly becoming that way. They're like technology is making meatless meat. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I like this. I like that you as a teacher are still continuing to promote that free thought education.
I'm trying to.
Right, but
To the best of your ability.
right, because you're only one
Yeah.
person comparatively to
Well, and I
the
know,
rest of the American system.
I know, I know I'm not the only teacher that is trying to do this, but when you don't have the parent support for where you're trying to go, or the kids are just too lazy or don't want to or whatever, it's a really difficult hill to climb sometimes.
Yeah.
And sometimes you feel like you're on there all by yourself.
Yeah.
Well, it is good that there are people still trying to climb it.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think we're pretty close to wrapping up. So we will do the housekeeping stuff. But before that, thank you again, OpalMom, for coming and sharing your opinion on here and letting us get to know you a little bit better.
Thank you.
I almost understand you a little bit more now than I thought I already did.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, it's good meeting you, Opal.
Yeah, it was nice to meet you too, Malcolm.
So once again, thank you to Nadia Diaz for our podcast cover art. Her Instagram is at Arthead Creations, no spaces, no capitals.
If you put spaces or capitals in there, you're wrong.
I mean, he's right. And then thank you. Oh, wait, she also has a portfolio where I believe you can message her. I want to say it's NadiaDiazVFX.com. www.nadiadiazvfx.com. That'll also be linked. That's such a good URL.
It's a good URL. Good choice, Nadia. You did it.
Thank you to Jensen Krall, who made our intro and outro song for the podcast. He's been working on a musical, and I think it's been over 2 years now that he's had this demo out. But go listen to it. It's called Knocking on Doors for his musical Tea Time. You can find that just about anywhere. Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music. I will have that linked in the description so you all can listen to it. We also have an email. It's waiting 4 seconds at gmail.com. That's waiting the number 4 seconds at gmail.com. So you guys can message us either your questions, opinions, whatever, so we can talk to our interviewees like Opal all these questions. So
yeah, if you guys have questions that you feel like we aren't asking that we should be, or people that you think would be really interesting, or if you think you're interesting enough and would like to come on, please go ahead and shoot us an email.
So anyways, thank you again, OpalMom, for coming and hanging out with us.
Of course. It was fun.
So we will...
Cool to meet one of our former guests' parents.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I don't think we've done that yet.
No, you're the first.
Yay, I'm a first.
So until next time, on the shed.
Almost, Jed.